Hi. Today I have a very special guest on my interviewing show, I guess, is what you call it. Dirtypiece, or Clark. I'm going to be calling him Clark because Dirtypiece is a lot of syllables. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Jeremy. How you doing?
Oh, I'm doing fantastic.
Awesome, man.
Uh,
Thanks so much for having me on your show. I've been super excited to join the show.
Hell yeah. I've been excited to talk to you because, for a little bit of background, Clark is a developer for Rhythm Horizon, a, you know, grassroots rhythm game experience. So, Clark, can you tell us a little bit about how you got into rhythm games and Rhythm Horizon?
Absolutely, yeah. Um, so I started playing dance games, I think, in college in 2001. So it was around September 2001. And at that time, I think the first game, obviously, I got into was DDR because of the year. But I do think that around that time, it was one of those games where my roommate played it, but I actually didn't play. And so I kind of knew of it, through just going to the arcade and stuff, but I'd never really gave it a try. But he had a home setup with some of the soft pads, and so we ended up playing through that. That's how I got into it originally. I think we mostly played third, fourth, and fifth mix, I think, to start.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Okay, Grandpa.
yeah, we had some of the. I don't know if anyone knows the old like PlayStation pen trick where you can like hold the disc open and then put in put in the game.
Yeah.
So that's how we would play. We actually had the Japanese versions of the game, and so we would play those, and it was super fun because like I remember just like kind of playing for hours and hours and hours, and like it was his game, but I was borrowing it and playing it so much that eventually I ended up getting better than him, which was great, and I'm
Got
sure
him.
he loved that very much. So that's sort of how I got into it, and then I've been playing now for 20 years, just about, off and on with different games, and so you know, uh, I think I started with probably how everyone started. I had the soft pads. I bought some of the standard ones that came from Konami when you buy the PlayStation game, and I remember going to I think it was like the local hardware store, Dunn Lumber out here, and I would staple them down to a piece of plywood so it wouldn't bunch up,
Oh,
and shift all over the place.
yeah, I use duct tape myself. But
Nice.
yeah,
Yeah, I should have tried the duct tape method. I never thought to try that. Um, and then I ended up getting some of the red octane pads. They had like a soft pad back in the day, which I think, if I remember correctly, I think it had like kind of these dome shaped buttons where you could kind of feel where you were a little bit. Um,
yeah, I remember. I remember that.
yeah, I'm not sure if they had like a piece of styrofoam in them. I forget exactly, but they were a
Yeah,
little
there was
more
like a hard
rigid.
foam. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So that was kind of nice. So I played on those for a while, and then I kind of got into um, metal pads a few years later, and so I ended up getting red octane metal pads actually originally, um, and then they had that kind of like blue metal look or whatever, and then I ended up getting a couple cobalt fluxes a few years later, and so
Oh,
that's yeah,
I
yeah.
remember those red octane pads. Yeah, I remember them.
Yeah, they were kind of not the greatest design, but they worked well, for the time. And I remember I used mine quite a bit until it basically broke and wasn't functional anymore. I
Hmm.
can see that you've got a Cobalt Flux in the background, which is pretty
Yeah,
awesome. I've
it's my look
definitely,
at
yeah.
it's my look at me. I'm a dance game people. I have no other set pieces.
Yeah, so I kind of that's how I kind of got into dance games and started playing. And then after a while, I started going to arcades. We actually had a number of great arcades out here. I'm in the Seattle area, so a lot of the arcades, both when I was in college and after college, were having like extreme machines. We had even some solo, like some like fifth mix, a lot of that kind of stuff. And there was actually one arcade out here called Illusions, which is no longer here. It was in Issaquah. And what was really cool about that arcade, it was kind of like a combination like laser tag, like mini golf, and arcade. But they had so many arcade machines that people would just go up there and play. So many dance game machines, and that was actually one of the original test sites for ITG One at the time because some of the folks who
Oh,
worked on ITG are in this area as well. And so that's the first time I actually played in the Groove, which was kind of the game that I really got into, in the last, like, I would say, I don't know, 7 years or something. I can't remember when did it come
hmm.
out. Um, and so I ended up actually buying my own R21 Dedicab a few years
Oh,
back. and I had that for about 4 years before I sold it to someone who was local out here, and then started moving on to obviously 9-panel, which we'll get into, I'm sure, more in the future of this discussion. But yeah, I think kind of started out that way, and so that's sort of how I got into dance games and how I was playing around. One of the, I guess, interesting things is I never really was in the community that much. I actually didn't really post online. I never really connected with anyone. It was sort of one of those things where I would read forums, but I knew kind of who some people were, but I never went to events. I never actually got to get to know some folks.
I was totally the same way. Like anyone I know from like, I don't know, 2011 or 2010, I just happened to run into in the arcade.
Yeah, we actually had some local players that we would trade scores, and stuff, which was really fun. And I actually never really got to meet some of them until occasionally it would be like, oh, that's you, that's cool. But yeah, it was kind of neat because I would read a lot of Air Ninja Japan originally. That was really big for me when I was in college because obviously there's a lot of great players on there. I think that's sort of how I got into playing in the local arcades was, I saw was a Yasu's Max 300, infamous picture. And so that kind of stuff got me a little bit more clued into oh, hey, there's actually people that play, there's this community online, et cetera, et cetera. And then getting to Rhythm Horizon. So the way that I got involved with that project, and for folks who don't know, Rhythm Horizon was sort of a project that started from Matt and Lara, so Mad Matt, and then Hurt Piggy Pig. And so they, have done a lot of things for the dance game community, but they were working on this new game, codenamed Stompers at the time. And I didn't really know much about Matt until I'm trying to think 2014 maybe, when I started watching some of his videos on YouTube, and I was like, oh wow, this guy's really good. Who is this guy?
Yeah.
And so I was kind of getting into that. And then what ended up happening was I learned about the Bearpocalypse and Girlpocalypse tournaments. I think this was BP5 at the time, through R21. There was this R21 forum, and I decided to watch it. And so while I was watching, Matt was playing his set or something, and I think he said, hey, I'm making this game called Stompers. Some people were talking on Twitch. And he was like, and I want to do some cloud stuff. I want to do some internet-based features, but don't really know how we're going to do that yet, et cetera, et cetera. So I was like, well, I kind of know how to do that stuff. I'm a programmer by trade. Now a manager, but programmer originally. And I also know how to do server development. So I was like, hey, maybe I'll reach out. So I reached out to Matt at that time, I think through YouTube. If I remember correctly.
That's so funny. Just a YouTube comment or a DM. Just hey, I really want to work on the game.
So that's the funny thing, man. I'm pretty sure it was a DM. I'm pretty sure I just reached out to him. I was like, hey, I'm some rando. Do you guys need a server programmer? And it was really funny.
YouTube pick. Right? Let me run your server.
Yeah, it was super random, right? Because when I did that, obviously he had no clue who I was because, I had never been in the community or anything, so he didn't know who I was. And it was just great because, he responded and he was like, yeah, let's chat. And so we actually had a chat, and I was, super nervous. I'm like, oh, man, I hope they let me do this project. I hope I can help out in whatever way. And we just talked for, I think it was a couple hours over, video. And, they were like, oh, wow, this guy, knows his stuff, let's get him on the project, right? And so we actually we hit it off from there, and then what happened was I sort of worked with them for about a year, working on the server side of the stuff, which we can get into more later if you have questions about that. But what was kind of cool was Matt invited me to go to Bearpocalypse 6, after we had worked together for a few months. He was like, hey, we're going to do this tournament, for the final one for Bearpocalypse, would you like to come? And at the time, it was kind of funny. I actually had already committed to MC a wedding in Japan for my friend. And I was like, ooh, it conflicts with the Bearpocalypse weekend. So I was in Japan that year to see my friend for unrelated reasons. And I asked him, I'm like, look, man, can I just go to this dance game tournament? I know I already said I was going to do your wedding, but can I go to this?
It's your super special once in a lifetime day, but I gotta stomp on some arrows, bro.
The best part was, so we're sitting in I don't know where this was, like it was like Shinagawa, Tokyo or something, right? At a bar, and he's like, "Say no more, man. We've been friends. I know you. Just go. Like, I'm not gonna ask you to miss this for my wedding." I was like, "You're the best, man." So I ended up going, and that was actually one of the best trips, of my life because I met so many people in the community through that tournament, right? Like some of the great stamina players, some of the great foot speed players were there, and I still, connect and communicate with all those folks today. So I was really, really fortunate to be able to go to that tournament. And just kind of like witness, that stuff was happening. So it's a long story, but that's kind of how I got involved with the project and a little bit about my history as well.
Okay, that's very interesting. So how long would it have been by now that you're working on the game?
Yeah, so I think Matt and Lara started the project like in 2013, 2014 timeframe.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and to just kind of like, I guess, like describe the team, because we're a very small team, right? It's basically me, Matt, and Lara, and then another friend of mine who does the electronics for the new pad that we're developing. And so the four of us are basically the core team that exists today. Back then, Matt and Lara had started the project. Matt's doing the game development. Lara does like everything. She does like the UX design, the hardware design, the business stuff. It's really crazy. So the two of them, and then at the time Brittany as well, who was involved with our project early on, we're working on this together. And so I kind of joined around 2015, like I mentioned, and so I've been on it for about 6 years now. And it's one of those projects where, we all work on it all the time. So probably not every single day, but most days, we're working on it, and especially on the weekends and stuff. So it's been a really big part of our lives for the last, 5 to 7 years.
Yeah, that's a really long time. I mean, like, the game looks in pretty good shape. I got to play it. Lots of fun, lots of cool features. We're probably not going to talk about the game itself too much.
Sure.
But I guess I'm more just interested in like what is it like being a I guess small indie developer in the dance game community, especially because the dance game community kind of doesn't have the expectation to be like paying for content. Specifically like in the custom scene, everyone's kind of like, okay, I buy my pad and then everything's free from there on out. And Rhythm Horizon is a paid subscription. I don't know, like what are your thoughts on all of that?
Yeah, it's a really great question. So, obviously, the subscription model was something we weren't sure that we were going to do or not when we first started the project. Being a small team, we say this a lot when we talk with the community. And by the way, the community is incredible. We got to talk a little bit about that later too, because this isn't just our game. Like the community helped build this game, right? Which is really
Mm-hmm.
amazing. But I would say that, from the perspective of the subscription, really what came down, that calculation in our minds was essentially, well, we want to do a couple things with this project, right? We had a couple goals. Like one was we really want to make sure that it's a passion project for us that's not, driven for revenue purposes, right? So like none of us are making any money on this thing. Matt and Lara have poured insane amounts of money into this project. It's really a passion project for us, right? And we really want to make it as affordable as possible, as accessible as possible, because really, our goal with this is to do something for the community, to give back to the dance community, which has been so great to us, and then also to just make sure that it's ubiquitous and as many people as possible can participate, right? So those are kind of our overarching goals. So then it was a question of like, okay, so what do we want to do in terms of the content, right? And so obviously for the charts, we do a lot of community generated content. So all of the charts are built by folks in the community, which is really, really cool. The music itself is actually also kind of a mix of community music and then music that we've gotten from other artists that we've licensed. And so that's one cost that we pay for this project is, we wanted to make sure that all the content was like copyright legit, like all of the content that we serve up through the game is able to be played by everybody and we don't have to worry about royalties and all that stuff. And so, all of the content that gets submitted is, given to us with rights, and then we pay the artist for their content. And so, from the perspective of the songs, there's a cost there, and then there's also the server costs, right? So we have servers that we run in the cloud. So for folks who know anything about the cloud, we run all of our stuff on Microsoft Azure, which is basically an offering that you have to pay. It's like pay per use type offering. So a lot of my time is spent trying to optimize that and make it as cost effective as possible for the game. But a lot of our server features require that ongoing cost, which is a monthly rate that we have to pay. So that's kind of where we came from with the subscription. We were like, well, let's make a subscription that's, fairly affordable, doesn't really, have to break the bank for anybody, but will allow us to keep the project running and sustained for a long time. And so, it's right now it's $5 a month or $30 a year if you want to get a subscription. We don't set up automatic recurrences. You can just buy or not buy as much as you want, and if you don't want to play for a while, that's fine. But basically, yeah, like we think it would be likely more cost effective than going to the arcade all the time, because obviously, like, a lot of really, really skilled players spend a lot of money at the arcade.
Oh yeah, I think I remember hearing like Chris Strike spends like hundreds of dollars a week when he goes to the arcade to practice DDRAs.
Absolutely, yeah. I actually, that's one of the reasons I bought a machine, was because I was spending so much at the arcade. I was like, well, in 4 years I could buy one anyway. I might as well,
Yeah.
save some costs. And so yeah. So that's kind of our goal. But like honestly, we're trying to keep it as close to free as we can, in terms of as low cost as possible.
Well, I do think that's one of the cooler things about Rhythm Horizon is that there's like a lot of infrastructure in the custom community, like Groove Stats, or like the QR codes in Simply Love and all that stuff that kind of act as leaderboards and the leaderboard functionality that you expect in like the games from like the companies, like DDR or 2DX or Pump It Up or whatever. That comes in your game. It's like a feature that people seem to expect at this point with rhythm games, and then you get to have it, which is really nice. So then, y'all have had some rocky PR over the years.
Sure.
What's it like being I guess a developer on the other side of the rocky PR?
That's a great question. Yeah, I would say that it's been an interesting ride. Like I definitely feel like we've got a lot of folks in the community that are super excited about our project, contribute to it. A lot of folks that are really engaged and like support us in a lot of different ways, which has been really outstanding, right? So from that perspective, it's been wonderful, right? Like I mean, I think we just to give like a quick timeline, like we started this project like 2013, 2014. It's kind of two separate initiatives that are pretty large. So one is the game itself, which we're building, right, Rhythm Horizon, and the other is the Rhythm Horizon platform, which is our dance pad. So those two projects are what we've been primarily focused on over the last 7 years, and it's been really interesting to see, like when we launched the beta. So we launched the beta of the game in April of 2018. And when we launched, like the reception was just spectacular, right? Like we had hundreds of people signing up, lots of folks giving us feedback. It was a really exciting time. And I remember we were we were actually like, how do I say? We were kind of coding up to the wire, shall we say? I think it was like 4 days prior to the launch. We didn't really have a way to buy the game. Because we were still getting the website set up. So like,
it's kind of important.
Yeah, it was pretty intense. I remember I took some days off work actually to just have a long weekend so that we could make sure launch went well. And I think it was almost the night before launch, or maybe 2 nights before launch. I was up till 4 a.m. getting the purchase flow for PayPal working, so that we could actually take subscriptions and people's payment, which was outstanding. But what was really great is, we launched the next day. It went out very smoothly. We had a few bugs, which was cool, and the community helped us find those. But what was great is like we just had like folks just send us like gifts and stuff to our house. Like we actually had chocolate fruit sent the day of while we were launching, and
Oh, that's really cool.
yeah, it was just super nice, right? Like it was really, really incredible. And so there's that side of it that's been outstanding, and I already mentioned, but this is community built, right? So all of our charts have been built by members of the community, and folks who play the game regularly. And then there's also like I guess we might get into this later, but we sort of have two concepts for when you're playing a chart. So there's like the chart data itself, which is the notes, that you hit, and then there's the song sync data, which is separate. And so that song sync data has actually been synced by folks in the community as well to make sure that the timing's on sync, and when anyone writes a new chart, they don't actually have to worry about syncing, right? Which is really nice. And so, Sudsy and Vosby, I would say, are the two that have really, really helped us out there. I'm pretty sure Sudsy has either cut and synced, I don't know, like 90% of our song content that's up there today. It's really great. Yeah, he's just been outstanding. So really appreciate.
Love that guy. Great guy.
Oh yeah, awesome guy. So really appreciate those contributions. And so it's been really wonderful and warm from that perspective. From the other perspective, we are a small team. It's really hard for us to come up with stuff that's exciting for the community every however often they want it. And so one of the things we've run into a lot is like we all work full-time jobs, and so we only get to work on this in our spare time. And so as a result, it takes a long time for certain things to come out and stuff like that, particularly the pads, right? So the pads are something that folks have been really excited about, and we're super, super excited to have folks excited about that. But it's definitely been something where, we get a lot of, what's the word, trolling online.
Yeah. What do they call that?
What do the youngins call that these days? So we get a lot of that, right? Which is like, again, nothing that we're not used to. It's just it does sort of, like, some days it demoralizes you, because like you're spending so much time on something that you're so passionate about, and it can affect you, right? But we try not to let it affect us too much, because like I said, there's so many people that support us. It's really great to have both sides of that. But yeah, I do think there's been some of that for sure, and I think that we haven't been as consistent or as often with our updating because we don't have a social media manager. It's me. Spoilers. If you ever see
you're post, the social media manager?
Well,
interesting.
Yeah. So if you see a post from Rhythm Horizon officially, it's usually me. But yeah, I think it's it's one of those things where we try to answer all comments, we try to answer all questions as best we can. But yeah, there's definitely, like, we're just not able to provide updates and communication contact as often as we would like. So
okay, what's it been like being, I guess, the community manager then? Because that's a pretty different wheelhouse than writing server code to talk to robots.
Yeah, I think one of the cool things about this project is we all wear many hats, right? Like, we sort of just pitch in where needed, because obviously it's like a small startup, right? So we have a lot of things that need to get done. So when it comes to the social media outreach, really what I'm talking about is kind of like our Facebook company page, and I think Lara usually posts on the Twitter. I don't really do anything on the Twitter, but when it comes to the Facebook company page, I'm usually the one posting there, both for the Rhythm Horizon game page itself as well as the Rhythm Horizon platform page. And yeah, it's fascinating. Like, you get a lot of people who have really great questions that we never thought of, and I always love responding to those, because it's kind of like, oh hey, like, what do we think about this? This is really cool. So it's been great to reach out and like meet people that way. And then there's like, our Discord, which is where we primarily communicate with folks, and that's kind of an open discussion where folks can come in and just ask whatever they want. And all three of us, so me, Matt, and Lara primarily, are the ones in there that are communicating and just responding back to stuff. I would say that that's the one where we probably have the most chatter and the most regular touch points with the community. So that one's nice. But yeah, I would say as a role, it's fine. Like, I like it. I think we get a lot of interesting questions. If we get something that we feel like is not really how should I say, constructive, we usually don't respond. But
it's probably a good way to do it. Like, what's the saying? Don't feed the trolls. Right?
Yeah. I think it's obviously, if anyone asks like a legitimate question, we try our best to answer it. Based on the knowledge we have at the time. Like, we don't try to hide anything. And I think the other thing that's a good outreach connection that we have is Lara's like Twitch stream. So like, whenever she and Matt play, they usually stream, and then folks come in there and ask lots of questions, and so that's a great way to also get information about the game too.
I was able to catch one of those. It was actually really cool seeing the game in action. or in more action with like a non-Cobalt Flux pad, because like the Cobalt Fluxes are fine and all, but like it's a Cobalt Flux. But
Absolutely. Although we do have players that play on Cobalt, so as most people probably know, today our pad is not available for sale yet, and so a lot of the people who do play today have actually either built their own pads, which is pretty impressive, and so they have their own 9-panel setups that they've made themselves, or they have SMX pads, right, or
yeah.
Cobalt Fluxes. So there's definitely people who play on those
Wait,
even today.
SMX pads work for? Oh, do they just play like a 4-panel version of the game or a
So
5-panel?
SMX has a they have extra panel additions you can buy, right, and put in. So you can have 9-panel setup with
Oh,
SMX.
okay.
So we have a couple players that have done that where they basically have set up 9 or 18 panel even to play doubles. So yeah,
18 panels sounds ridiculous.
it's
I'd love to try it
amazing.
one day, but like, damn, 18 fucking panels is a lot of panels. Um, so that's cool. So then I guess why did you okay, because like it seems like y'all are primarily from the ITG community, at least you and Matt. And I think Laura's more of a pump player, but I don't really, I'm not super familiar. Um, like I guess how do you because you needed to transfer people from that community to your community, right? At the end of the day, like do you all have like talks about how you're gonna do that? Like what's your approach
Yeah.
to gaining players?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So, obviously, there's been a lot of interest that has ginned up just from the beta launch that we had 3 years ago. So we
Mm-hmm.
have people that are super interested in the game. They stay up to speed on what we're doing and stuff like that. And then we have a set of regular players that just play all the time, like pretty much every week. And so, you know, those folks are really great because they're helping us kind of find and get through the final pieces of what we need to do before we go out. But when it does come time to launch, right? Like when we have the Rhythm Horizon platform for sale, when we basically have the game, I mean, the game's basically ready. We're just waiting to finish the platform before we release it to final version. So once that happens, we're obviously going to have some events. We're going to announce it to everybody, online and to all of our friends and all that
Mm-hmm.
great stuff, and other folks in the community who are influential and can let people know. Um, I think we've also had discussions about like doing like a road show type of thing or setting up tournaments, stuff like that to kind of just promote the game and get people interested. One of the challenges right now is that it's just not really like we don't feel there's a good reason to do it right now just because we don't have the pads ready. So like it's obviously you can play on keyboard and a lot of people do that
Yeah.
too, but it's a little hard to push for like a full campaign or anything until we have the game being accessible to everybody where you can actually play, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah, once the pads are ready, we'll make a big concerted push. And there's thousands of people that follow the pad page, so that's great. They'll get the update as soon as it's available. And so, yeah, we definitely have thought about some of that stuff. When it comes to like a full marketing campaign or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
We have some other ideas. I don't want to share them all here, but we have a few
Oh
a few
yeah, yeah.
ideas
Don't.
that we'll want to do there. Yeah.
That'd be cool. That'd be cool. It'd be fun to see what y'all come up with because y'all are very creative people. Between because I know a lot of actually features that end up even in like Simply Love. I heard about first from your Rhythm Horizon game, which is very like I guess interesting. So y'all are doing a bunch of innovative things within the community. So to see like your ad campaigns and stuff, that's gonna be cool to watch. Because I assume you're all doing it in house, right? You're not like hiring a. Actually, I don't know if I can ask that.
Yeah, no, I mean, feel free to ask. To be honest, we haven't thought about the marketing side as fully yet. That we will once we get closer to launch. I think, obviously, we will be doing our own internal campaigns and stuff like that. But we may look into, having some people help us out. There's a lot of really creative people in the community. Let me just say that can help us with some of that stuff. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
very creative community. That's one of the coolest things about it, in my opinion. So on the, I guess like on the adoption side, because you didn't know Matt or Laura until you sent the YouTube DM. Like, what was that like onboarding process like? And it kind of getting like acclimated because like you're not getting paid for this like no, for normal coworker stuff. Like you deal with them because you have to deal with them. Like were there any like hiccups in that um, process?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it started out extremely professional, is how I would say. So, I had to sign an NDA, all
Yeah.
that great stuff. And I feel like we sort of started out together as like business associates, right? It's like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, you're interested in doing this project. We're interested in doing this project. I remember originally they actually offered to pay me money and royalties, and I was like, no, it's fine. Like, this is like my dream. I'll just do it. Like, I want to do this project so bad. Like, I do not care at all, right? And so it was one of those things where we sort of just kind of like aligned from the perspective of we were all passionate about the project and we were really, interested in making it a success. Now, obviously, we didn't know each other that well. We weren't friends before or anything, so we didn't know how it was going to work out. And so I think starting from a professional, like beat like that is great because if I decide okay I don't want to work with these folks, I'm gonna get out of here, and they can do the same, right?
Yeah.
Which is really good. One of the things that's been super cool about the evolution of it though is that they have really become extremely close friends to me, and I feel like, so I think I mentioned this before, but I've worked in software for about 17 years, right? And I actually did game development. That was my specialty. So I work with a lot of creative people throughout my career, and I've rarely met people as creative as Matt and Lara. Like, they're extremely creative in so many different ways. You mentioned some of the innovation I think that they brought with things like Simply Love and stuff like that. And I'll just be clear. If you guys see any innovation in the game, it doesn't come from me. None of it comes from me, okay? It's all Matt and Lara.
This stuff's really cool, man.
I have my uses. They are not coming up with amazing ideas for the next evolution of dance games. But I do think that, Matt and Lara are really, they have a great eye for that kind of stuff, and they're really creative, right? But on top of that, they're also just really amazing human beings. Like, I don't know how else to say it, but like I'll just give you an example, right? Like, when the COVID situation started, this is kind of like, silly, but I didn't want to go inside grocery stores, right? Because I was super worried about like the virus.
I think that's completely reasonable to not want to go into a grocery store at the beginning.
Yeah, so I was doing curbside pickup, and one of the places that I really like to shop at doesn't have curbside pickup, right? So I was like, okay, well, I'm just not going to go there. And they have this burrito that, oh my God, it's so good. I can't even describe it to you, but it's like the best burrito on the planet, right? So I'm like, oh man, I really miss that burrito. So it's like my birthday, and Matt and Lara just showed up at my door with like 10 of those burritos, right? Like,
oh, wow.
Like, just totally surprised me, like gave me the burritos. I was like, oh my God, this is so amazing. And it's a funny little story, right? But it's like that kind of stuff, like they're super genuine people, they're super caring people, and they're really passionate about what they're doing on this project, and like it's kind of contagious, right? Like, I mean, I don't ever want to leave this project. And Matt and I joke all the time because whenever I make a mistake, he docks my pay, from like 0 to 0. But it's like one of those things where I'm just like, man, I really hope that I get to do this project with them for as long as it goes, right? Because, and then beyond that, I hope we stay friends forever, and I'm sure we will. Because they've just been like amazing human beings. Like, I've grown a lot on this project. I've learned a lot on this project. And I feel like they have too, right? Through our collaboration. So it's been really great.
Probably,
yeah, it's been really great. And since we are such a tight-knit team, it's really easy to keep that same focus and that same passion, which is great because we don't have a lot of cooks in the kitchen. We don't have a lot of other, constraints that we need to deal with. Like, if you're working, in a professional environment at work, you've got, tens or hundreds of people that you have to work with, and you're working towards obviously common goals, but you feel more like a cog in the system rather than someone who's like really part of the founding of the project, right? And so it's a lot of fun in that regard.
Okay, yeah. So you mentioned that you did some like video game development. What'd you do with that?
Yeah, you mean like what games I developed in the past, or like what I worked on?
Both. Just like your history in game development.
Yeah, sure. So, so I started out doing game development, like I said, like 17 years ago, and I originally worked at Nintendo. So I actually did a couple of Nintendo titles when I first came out of college, and so I don't know if folks have played the Nintendo DS or the Wii, but for the
yeah, have you heard of those systems?
You may have heard of those systems. Yeah, so for the Nintendo DS, I actually worked on a game called Metroid Prime Hunters, which was the game that came with the Nintendo DS when you bought it at the store. So it was like the pack-in title, is what they call it.
I love that game. Played it at lunchtime all the time. Yeah.
Nice, nice. That's awesome, man. So, just to make you even more impressed, I did the menus. So I'm sure you thought the menus were the
Oh,
best
my
part of the
favorite
game.
part.
No. Yeah. So I actually started out for folks. I don't know if folks are programmers, but I started out kind of as a tools engineer, working with the art and design teams, and so I built a lot of like world editors and stuff for them. So that was primarily what I was doing when I started at Nintendo. So I had Metroid Hunters, as I mentioned. Then I also worked on a title called Ridge Racer DS, which was kind of like a port of Ridge Racer 64, I believe, at the time. And then I also worked on a title called Mario vs. Donkey Kong 2, which was a puzzle platformer title that was released on the DS as well. And then I worked on an unannounced Wii title, which unfortunately did not ship and got canceled.
Oh,
Yeah.
was it spicy? I'm not gonna ask what it was, but was it a spicy release?
I'm not sure I'm at
Or
liberty to say what it was, but yeah, it was a fun time. I'm really glad I got to work on it. It's just unfortunate it didn't ship. And then after I worked at Nintendo, I ended up going to Team Xbox actually, and worked there for a number of years. And so, if folks ever use the Kinect sensor, the original one that was on the Xbox 360, not the one that was on the Xbox One, but the 360,
yeah.
I was part of the launch team that worked on that. And so,
Oh,
I
I
also.
programmed one of those in college.
Oh, nice. Did you do
Phil
it through the
Rotondo.
PC or?
Yeah, the PC. Which call it? Every time I use one now, I'll say thanks, Clark.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, I remember when we developed the PC SDK, we were super excited about it because a lot of universities were picking it up for some really cool, like motion detection and a bunch of other really cool
Yeah, very
projects.
easy to use. You'd think it'd be complicated, but it really wasn't.
That's great, man. I'm really cool. It's really cool to hear you got to use that. Yeah, so I also worked on a pack-in title for the Kinect sensor. So the title that came with the game was called Kinect Adventures. It was a game where you do like rafting and dodgeball and stuff. And so I worked on that title, and then worked a little bit on Kinectimals and Kinect Star Wars, and then ended up building another little kind of game for Kinect called Kinect Fun Labs, where you could download a bunch of little mini games, experiences, and kind of play with your Kinect. Um, and so yeah, so that's some of the titles I worked on early in my career, and then later in my career, I went and worked at ArenaNet, which is the studio that builds Guild Wars 2. For anyone who's played that game, which is basically a massively multiplayer online role-playing game. And so most of my game development has been around those spaces.
Oh, very cool. That's awesome. No, that's which call it's a pretty big history in the industry. Why'd you guys choose 9 panel?
That's a really great question. Um, I think to give you the honest answer, you'd probably have to ask Matt, since it
Uh-huh.
kind of was his idea. But I will tell you my thoughts around it. Right, so it's very interesting because when I first joined the project, I was actually a little hesitant about 9 panel. I was like,
Hmm.
really 9 panel? Because obviously I'm a 4 panel player, right? I have been
Yeah.
for a long time. And when I first saw 9 panel, I'm like, okay, well, this is going to be crazy, right? Like, it's just 9 different columns with, potentially 18 if you're doing doubles, right? I'm like, that's just a lot of information. Is this really going to be, something people will pick up? Is it going to really be fun? Or is it
Hmm.
just going to be like an information overload? Like, and it was kind of interesting early on because obviously, we didn't have any charts when we started. And so really, this was around the time when we did the alpha. So we did an alpha release before we did the beta. And the alpha was free before we had subscription. And we had a lot of great folks that came in and helped build content for the alpha. And once we started like getting the content, it was clear that this was a magical thing, right? Because like when you first play it, you're like, okay, is this going to be super frustrating or what, right? And one of the things
Hmm.
that's been really interesting to me, so folks who play Pump come in and they pick up 9 panel pretty quick. And then folks who play
Hmm.
4 panel also pick it up, but I think it takes a little bit more time. Because when you think about it, it's like basically 4 panel and 5 panel combined, right? That's kind of
Yeah.
what you're doing. So it was quite fascinating because, Lara, having been a Pump player, like you said, she sort of adapted to 9 panel pretty quickly. For me, it took a little bit more time, but it wasn't as long as I had thought. It was actually like, maybe by my second, third play, I was already able to read a lot of what was already there, right? And
Yeah.
so then there's a question of like, okay, like how's it for beginners, right? Like how's it for new people? And we actually did have this problem originally because we had all the content we had built was like, so our rating system is different from ITG's, obviously, but it's, you would say it's like more of like advanced to expert level charts. And so we didn't really
Hmm.
have a lot of beginner content, right? And so we made a concerted effort to build beginner content. Um, and I think Matt and Lara did a great job of kind of creating these curated packs, so folks could get into the game. So we have like an intro pack, and then we have like a season pack, which we can talk about seasons if you're curious later. But basically, these were just curated like charts that we felt were really great. Showcased what 9 panel is all about, had new techniques, all that kind of stuff. And so once you start playing that curated content, it's like, wow, this is really, really amazing, right? Because one of the things we didn't think about was like brackets, for example. So if you're playing 4 panel, like obviously brackets exist. Same with
Yeah.
5 panel, right? But in 9 panel, like you're almost bracketing all the time because if
Yeah.
you hit the up arrow, you're gonna hit middle, or you're gonna hit up right, or you're gonna hit right. Like your foot has
Yeah.
no area where it's not hitting a panel, right?
Hmm.
And so
Yeah.
that created some really fascinating things that sort of evolved from the content itself, right? So people started. I remember all the charts we originally had were like single panel hits. There were no brackets at all. And then
Yeah.
eventually people started getting creative and throwing in brackets. I forget what we call these because I think we're still thinking of the naming, but there's basically like diagonal
Like,
brackets, vertical and horizontal, right? Because your foot can be
oh,
turned any
yeah.
particular way as you hit, right? And like some of the stuff people have made is super, super creative. I think Trev0115, if anyone knows him, he made like about 60 charts for us. They're all extremely innovative with like just trying different 9 panel techniques, and there's so much fun to play. It's really, really amazing to see. And when you get it and you finally start playing, like we've all said this, most of the people who have played locally with us at Matt and Lara's house is like, it's almost like relearning dance games again, and it's really exciting.
Hmm.
Because, we all had that feeling when we first played DDR, when we first played, Pump, and it's like, you're just kind of like you're learning so fast and you're achieving so fast and you get this great feeling of accomplishment, right? And like
Yeah.
it exists in 9 panel. It's quite amazing. It's quite
Like you
amazing.
get that like puppy love phase of dance games back. You're not just like a bitter person. It's like, oh, I got one excellent. It's not even worth playing the rest of the song.
Get out of here, the game's over.
Yeah,
um,
games are game bad. To use a word
yeah,
or a
game
phrase.
bad is yeah, definitely a common term these days. I think that
Hmm.
yeah, but like honestly, like I think that Matt's probably original intention with 9 panel, right, was just that he had sort of completed 4 panel, right? He was like, there's nothing left for me to do in 4 panel, so I want a new challenge. I want a new domain where we can explore. And I think that was the impetus or like kind of the genesis of it, but it has evolved into something much more, right? Like it's already,
Hmm.
and we don't even have like, some of the best ITG step chart artists out there building charts for Rhythm Horizon yet. Like once the game is available to them, they can get a pad. Like I'm really excited to see what they come up with because there's just a lot of creativity that you can do with 9 panels.
Yeah, no, this seems like a lot of cool. Yeah, and that's the thing. More people, chart more. The innovation culture grows. Like the crazy things you can fucking do, it'll all blow up. So that's pretty cool. You mentioned seasons. Why the season format? It seems pretty, I guess, unlike other rhythm games. I don't think most of the rhythm games do seasons. They seem to do like base pack, download pack, or like maybe a new style that has more songs. So what is the season? Why is the season?
Great question.
How is the season?
How is the season? So I think to answer that, I should talk a little bit about our scoring system because I think that'll help illuminate why we're considering having a season-based format for score tracking. So in our game today, there's essentially 3 ways to do score tracking and you can think of it as like 3 different leaderboards, 3 different world record trackers, et cetera, et cetera. There's the Rhythm Horizon platform, which is what we consider official score tracking, and that's not available to anyone yet, but when the pad comes out, if you buy the Rhythm Horizon platform and play on that, it will go into its own separate score tracking domain. So
Oh,
you
okay.
can think of it as like it's separate groove stats or something like that, right?
Like this is the official or a official platform. Okay, that makes
Correct.
sense.
Correct. And
Keep
the
all the
reason we
cheaters
wanted to
out.
do that was because, like, obviously the pad itself is, officially from us, which great, but we wanted to try to make scoring as consistent as we could across the board, where everyone either has the same hardware, or they're going for they're being used against the same system essentially, so that it gives like consistent scoring across the world, right? So that's kind of the idea with the official score tracking system, which is tied to the pad. So if you have a Rhythm Horizon platform, it will be able to do score tracking in a way that no other controller can do. Then
Okay.
there's,
So
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
sorry, but before you move on to that, I actually wanted to ask a question real quick. So I guess why do you have a specific or why did you choose to make a specific score tracking for that? Like for the rhythm or the impulse, not the impulse, the Rhythm Horizon platform. When it seems like, at least in the ITG 4 panel community, the people have generally accepted like, hey, like you're gonna play on a pad, whether it's an SMX, an Impulse, or a Rhythm Horizon platform, or an ITG official or a DDR upgrade. So I guess it seems that the community doesn't care about that too much. So why do y'all care about it?
So we don't have all of the features built yet for why we want that. But to give you some
Hmm.
examples, if we do things like remote tournaments, it will help ensure consistency of hardware across like tournament play, for example. There's also, so it's like, if you were like, let's say you're going to go to StaminaCon or something, there'll be a bunch of setups there that you have to play on, which are quote unquote official. Now, obviously, you can mod them or do whatever you want to them for your
Hmm.
set. But basically, usually there's rules around like, okay, you have a certain amount of time or whatever to mod your pad, and then there's, whatever you play. So that was kind of one of the original thoughts was like, okay, well, if we have kind of uniform play as much as we can across the globe, then that will be an equalizer for score tracking. Now, some people may not care, and that's okay. But I think that, what we were thinking is, whoever buys official hardware will have official score tracking that's associated with that hardware, for the purposes of comparing scores apples to apples. So that's kind of I guess the simple explanation. Yeah, so that's the first bucket. Then there's basically unofficial controllers, right? So that's where we are today. So if you buy the subscription and you play Rhythm Horizon, you can play with a Cobalt Flux, like the one behind you. You can play with an SMX pad. You can play with a keyboard. They'll all go into the same score tracking system because those devices are not official devices from us, right? So
Yeah.
that's all where everyone is today. So if you look at our Discord, you'll see people getting world records and stuff like that. Like all of that is happening through people's own custom setup, right? Or whatever they want to do. And so that is a system that we will keep around. It will still be there for world records, ever since we started tracking them, which was when we went out for the beta. And so basically, you can still do that. You can still play on keyboard, etc., and get score tracking through that system. And we don't
Hmm.
expect to remove that. We'll have both systems
Yeah.
available to players. And then the third
Oh
one
wait, and
is, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
sorry, I couldn't remember if you mentioned it. Do keyboard scores count in that bucket of the unofficial?
Yep.
Okay.
So today keyboards are lumped in with any other type of generic input device, which could be like an
Okay.
SMX pad or you know, like a Cobalt Flux, for example.
Okay.
Yep.
Sorry, and this last bucket.
Yeah. So the last bucket is not like a bucket in and of itself, but it's kind of like a sort of an ephemeral bucket that exists for the period of a season, and so that's kind of what the season concept is all about. So now that we understand that we have these two scoring systems, we also have seasons. And the idea with a season is, so let's take the example of like, I guess, I don't know, like score tracking today, right, in ITG. So there's records that have been gotten many, many, many years ago that are still top records. There's a lot of like, just content that's been like 99%ed, 100%ed, whatever. What we wanted to do with this game is kind of create fresh, like almost like events that happen that the whole community can participate in that are new and rotate every so often. So that's what we consider a season. And so really, what it means is when a new season occurs, and right now we have a season going. It's called Season 1, I think.
Great name.
Very creative name. And it's basically, so we've made a curated pack, which is called our Season 1 pack, and any charts you play from that pack will count towards the season score tracking for that season. And so it's just, you can think of it as a separate set of world records, a separate set of leaderboards, a separate set of score tracking that you can follow for that season. And then the idea is when the season ends, then those scores will be locked in time forever. And you can go back and review them, you can see them, but whoever like got the top score that season will be the top holder for
Oh,
forever.
that's actually really cool. And a lot of like competitive video games do that. Like Overwatch does that. Other things do that where they have like a new season, and that's like when you do the changes to the game. Like it's the new patch notes. So, which I think your seasons change songs as you go through them.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. So that's the idea. I mean, we've never had more than one season yet, but the idea is we would do that, right? The idea is that you could see the same song and charts appearing in multiple seasons, or you couldn't, right? Like they might be totally fresh with a whole new set of charts, etc. But the idea is that the content rotates inside of these seasons, and also the period of competition is like it's time capped, right? So that
mhm.
basically, like if you didn't get a chance to play in the last season, you can play in the next season and still, get great records and stuff like that. And so we see it as a means to just kind of keep the the community engagement and the content more fresh. Because we want people ultimately, once we get the community large enough in the game, we would love to have people just generating charts that they submit for season consideration, and then we'll take a look at the best charts and then put them into the next season, for example. And so,
Okay.
yeah, we're hoping it's kind of like a community generated system that just kind of perpetuates itself over time, and then
Okay.
folks can participate. So,
Okay. I mean, that's kind of like it's not the same as, but it's very similar to like SRPG or like the ECFA online series is, where so that kind of shows that like there is demand for this type of setup in the community, which is always a good thing.
absolutely.
Um, that's very cool. So then, like, I guess what is the like? Do y'all have like a long term plan? Like, so let's say like the pad comes out, right, and
Mhm.
then people like everyone starts getting the pads. Everything builds up. And you kind of have time to do most of the features that you care about. Like what's I guess the long term plan? Do you just keep seasons as long as it goes, or do you?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, we're going to kind of play it by ear and see how the community, basically receives seasons, how they like it, how they don't like it, etc. And then kind of like determine how often we want to roll them. But I mean, originally we were thinking once we go basically live with the pads and folks have them in their houses, then it's a matter of maybe there's like a regular cadence, right? Like maybe it's every 6 months, maybe it's every year, whatever. That we have these seasons. Now, technically, we have the capability to have multiple seasons running simultaneously, so we could also do that too if we wanted to. But basically, we're going to kind of play it by ear, release a first season, see how everybody likes it, see how it goes, and then we'll try and figure out like what is the proper cadence for that going forward. I think that we haven't we haven't really like talked too much yet about the things that would spawn off of seasons aside from the actual score tracking. But you could
Mhm.
imagine that there's like competitions or like achievements or other things we could do inside of that are related to a season. But again, it's a bit early for that. We're gonna try it out first and see what folks think. So.
The game. So then, like, are y'all afraid? Cause okay, so like when Pump came out, Konami sued them, Pump It Up, and they didn't win, so that's pretty sick. And then when ITG2 came out, Konami sued them, and they did win. Um, you might see where I'm going with this. Are you afraid that Konami's gonna sue?
So, yeah, I won't really comment much on that. I think the one thing I will say is, we're trying as best we can to do everything, like I mentioned earlier. We want to make sure that we have copyrighted content. We want to make sure we're doing things legally by the books and stuff like that. So, um, we're always careful with that kind of stuff. But yeah, I don't want to comment too I don't want to speculate on what may happen in the future or anything like that.
Okay. Because I also wonder if like SMX has this. I assume because SMX is done by Kyle Ward that he is, um, he probably has it in his mind that Konami may sue. But I don't know. Maybe it's like sufficiently different, which is always an interesting thing. I guess with copyright law. And that's also the thing is like where do y'all like think of like SMX in the new dance game space?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, we get this question sometimes from the community, like, hey, like, what about SMX? Like, what do you guys think? It's kind of interesting. Like, we don't really pay too much attention to what they're doing. Like, obviously, it's awesome what Kyle's doing. And I think we fully support that. Like I said before, we're sort of trying to we're trying to give back to the community in the best way we can. And I think what Kyle's done for the community, both with ITG and SMX, is just awesome, right? So, like,
Yeah.
the more like options and fun we can have in the community, the better. I do see. So SMX is kind of like maybe a different market from us. I'm not 100% sure because like it sounds like from what they're trying to target, they're targeting either folks who want to be arcade owners and have like a personal arcade setup at home, or maybe like it's in a gym, right, or a business where people can go play. Um, we're not really focused on that. Like our target is kind of like home PCs, like individual owners who want to buy a low cost, affordable platform, for example.
Hmm.
So we see it as almost like our goal we haven't talked much about the pads, right? But our goal with the pads is really to create the most cost effective pad that we can that's also like very high quality and at the professional level of play, right?
Yeah.
So think Cobalt Plus 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 or whatever.
Yeah.
I think with SMX, though, another interesting aspect of that is, obviously we have folks who I mentioned earlier who are playing our game with SMX, and there has been questions about like, hey, will we make an SDK that allows the game to work directly with SMX? Because today we treat SMX basically as like a generic controller. And obviously, like we haven't talked about the features of our platform, but there's analog signal and stuff, so you can get a little bit more. You can get more than just like I hit the button or I didn't hit the button kind of
Yeah.
thing. So, we may consider things like that in the future, like doing some kind of like integration with SMX for Rhythm Horizon. We just haven't really looked at that stuff because we're just busy with so many other things. Like there's,
Yeah.
like I said, Team of Four. There's like a lot of stuff that we're building all the time, and we have a lot of priorities aside from that. But it is
Yeah.
a great question, and personally, I think what Kyle's doing with SMX is just awesome. So yeah.
I'm trying to think of not pad questions because everyone always talks about the pads. It's always about the pad. I'm sick and tired of hearing about these goddamn pads. So Rhythm Horizon has a lot of features that kind of don't exist in other rhythm games. So I guess like, what is your feature design process like at your company?
Yeah, that,
How do you decide which features make it, which ones don't? Who has the say in such a small team?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So, like I said before, I'm not great at being the ideas guy. However,
Hmm.
I do think that when it comes to like a new idea or something that we want to build, right, there is kind of sort of a loose process that we go through. Again, it's nothing super formal, but a lot of times, the ideas will come from Matt or Lara directly. One of the great things about the fact that they're just been in the community for a long time, but they're also very high level players, is they kind of understand like problems that may come up, say that I don't, right? Because I'm a more average player, for example.
If you have like an example of a feature that kind of went through this, like to bring it to nice concrete example.
Yeah, sure. So like, a good one is like when we built the Rhythm Horizon platform prototypes, because we've built I don't even know how many now, dozens? I'm not even sure how many iterations we've gone through with it. Like one of the things that we wanted to make really sure of was, will it hold up to different high level playstyles, right? Um, and even when it comes to like the content of the game, right? So like high level charts, like what works and what doesn't, right? Like if you're playing, 250 BPM, if you're playing 200 BPM, like what patterns work, what don't. Just like I'm sure a lot of the stuff that stamina chart artists go through. A lot of those types of things are like stuff that we talk about that necessarily I wouldn't think as much about, right, working on the project, but like Matt or Lara will think about that, right? Um, so it's kind of interesting because we all bring different perspectives and different backgrounds from our own play and our own styles to the project. And so that kind of creates this collaborative environment where we can talk a lot about like what will a feature be. Um, so I guess like if I had to think of like one example, so we built this system called like rivals, where you can sort of like set a rival, and then it kind of shows like who's your rival and how are they doing. So like for example, so Matt came up with this idea originally, which was like, okay, let's have like a search where you can find friends and then or rivals, and you can basically say, hey, I want this person to be my rival, and then in the game it'll actually show you like what's their top score, what's your top score, like you can watch their previous plays and stuff. So that's the contribution that Matt added to the equation. Now on my side, I was thinking like, well, one of the cool things about having a rival is that ideally there's someone that's close in skill level to you, right? It's somebody that you want to compete against who's not like 10 levels above you, but they're someone that you can actually like try to overcome, right? So what I did was, and this was sort of like not really planned with the original feature set, was I built in like rival recommendation engine that basically recommends on our website like who should be your rival for specific dimensions, right? Like whether it be timing, whether it be scoring, or whether it be difficulty of play. And so so it's kind of cool because like what that ended up doing was like, okay, well, we had this rival system in the game, which when it first came out was just you choose a rival and you have no idea who's a good rival or not. Then we had a recommendation engine that was like, hey, here's the rivals you should probably choose. And so then me and Matt were thinking like, well, maybe we should just like auto assign you a rival, right? Like in the game, like it's like we could just do that for you and be like, here's who we recommend, right? So that's kind of how a lot of the ideas sort of evolve. They start out as like a simple concept where it's like, well, I'd really like this thing, and sometimes it starts with what do other dance games not have that we wish they would have had, or what can we leverage with the fact that we are connected through the cloud, and like what can we create, right? And so it's kind of that's often how it starts. It's like, hey, there's this concept that we really want to do. In fact, I guess another good way to think about it is there's this frustration with how we used to do it. Like, how can we make that simpler, right?
Yeah.
And so like even the timing windows kind of went through that, where it was like I think we had very, very tight timing windows to start. I think it was like 12.5 for the highest window, and we ended up landing on 15 because after playing for a while, it seemed just too brutal to do 12.5.
12.5 is miserable.
Right, and like that's not a thing I could have built or really like contributed much to, just because I'm not a great timing player, right? But there are great timing players that play our game, and so through them we were able to get some signal and be like, okay, what feels right? Like what is actually realistic and what is not. So that kind of stuff's been really great, and that's sort of how I guess I would describe our feature ideation process. Is we all bring our own unique perspectives to the table, which ultimately get merged and become like the actual ultimate end feature, and the community also contributes to that, right? We're doing a feature right now which Matt just built, which is like a practice mode where you can basically like the chart itself won't advance until you step on the next arrow, and then it'll advance. And that's that's like brand new, right? Like we just got it out this week. He's testing it right now. We're gonna get it into the hands of the community and see what they think, right? And it's like, does this work? Does it not work? Etc. And so a lot of our feature ideation starts that way. It starts as an idea, and then it's sort of we get feedback from the community and then refine the idea, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Actually, another thing with that practice mode that other communities did, specifically the keyboard community, they call them isolation charts, where you like cut the like 30 seconds of the song that you actually wanted to practice, and then you just have that loop, and that like that's the song, right?
Yeah.
Maybe we could build that into the practice mode.
So you must be a prognosticator, because we just talked about that the other day. So we actually have a mode in the game right now where you can set like a starting point, and then you hit a key combination to reset, and you can just keep replaying that same part of the chart that's hard for you. But we did talk about looping just recently, so Great suggestion, Jeremy. We'll get that out for you as soon as we can.
Oh, awesome. Glad to help. I expect to be in the credits.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's
That's funny.
it's kind of cool that like we have so many different like music games out there too to draw inspiration from, because there's just a lot of really great work being done. I think, did you interview SteveReen at all yet, or?
I haven't talked to SteveReen.
Okay.
Vincent actually has a good interview, which I'll probably link now that it's mentioned.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, with what you call it? It's he has a pretty good interview with SteveReen doing Waterfall, and I know that's something that SteveReen was touching on.
Yeah,
That
So,
you can pull inspiration from other rhythm games.
yeah, and I think I watched is it Vincent's ITG? Is that his name? I forget the.
Yeah, his name's VincentITG.
Yeah, sorry, Vincent. I don't actually know you, so apologies. But I did watch that interview, and it was quite fascinating, because even just like talking through like Steve's mentality about how he built Waterfall and some of the considerations he had, like it sparks ideas, right, in your mind of like, oh hey, maybe that's something we should look into. So I love it. I think it's cool that we're sharing these ideas more broadly as a community too. So that's great.
Exactly. That's actually important. That I mentioned this in the Mute interview, is that like innovation is a lot of small incremental things that like slowly build up over time. So the more you share information and expertise, the more innovation that you get in the community, which is something that benefits everybody. Especially because like, I mean, minus y'all, because y'all are a business as well. But even then, like because like no one really profits too much from this. It only benefits people,
Yeah, totally. And I think the more that we can do that type of collaboration across the community, the better.
Oh yeah, absolutely. The consolidation, I think, is a big problem in the community. But yeah, it is what it is.
Yep.
I don't know. Is there anything you want to talk about or point out about Rhythm Horizon?
Yeah, the one thing I do want to make sure that I call out is, I just want to say again, thank you to the community for all that they've done. I'd even like to call out a few specific folks, just because, like, without them, I don't think this project would be, as great as it is. We have so many song contributions from folks in the dance game community. Some great examples are like Sephiroth's Paradox from, Megasphere, Cardboard Box, Dragon, Friera, and Vosby, just to list a few. And I think when it comes to like our chart content, we've had, I think right now we have about 631 charts for the game, all of which have been created by folks in the community, right? And so I do want to give a big shout out to like C Wiggers, C Wiggers big time, because he not only creates content for the game, he's also helping us find bugs, suggesting things for fixing, and he's also like playing the game a lot, which is really, really helping with the development of the game. And that's the other thing I'll call out. If folks are interested, out there, and you want to help contribute to our game, like feel free to stop by the Discord. We have a feedback channel. You can always throw stuff in there, and we'll take it for consideration. A lot of the features that are in the game have been influenced or have even come from suggestions from the community, which is great. So we're very open to that. I think I mentioned Trev0115. He's just awesome. Like, his charts are amazing. If you try the game, play his charts. They're really great charts. ITG Alex, another amazing charter who obviously contributed. And then we have a few newer folks who have joined as well, like Ghetto Penka, a baby. They've been creating some really great content for us and helping with bug fixes and other things like that, helping us find problems. Timotry, Telperion, Arvin, Nav, all great contributors to the game. So thank you so much to all of them. And yeah, I think aside from that, I just want to thank you, Jeremy, for having me on the show. This has been really great.
Hi, it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I just, hey man, you're the one talking. I just sit here and kind of nod every now and then.
Yeah, so that's great. I think if folks have questions, like, our Discord is the best place to find us, and I'm sure I can share that link out with you, so you can share it with folks for this video. But
where can we find your stuff? Like, where can we download the game? What are your Twitters and add your Instas? Do you have an Insta?
Yeah.
Y'all should have an Insta.
Actually, I don't think we have Instagram. That's the one we don't have. We probably should. So the easiest is if you just go to www.rhythmhorizon.com. There's a bunch of icons on the bottom of the website. You can click those and get in contact with us. We have a Facebook page, Twitter page, Discord, and we also have email. You can contact us that way too. Um, and yeah, like, feel free to try the game out. Feel free to give us feedback. We love that. And, we really, really do appreciate it. I mean, this is, like I said, this is community created, and we really want to like work with the community to help define the experience of the game as well as, the experience for the pads as well. So if folks have questions or want to help, please come by. We'd love to see you.
Well, thank you for coming on to the show and talking about Rhythm Horizon and your experience with it.
Yeah.
It's actually also my first foray into not ITG content, so very exciting.
Well, I'd love to be your first foray out of ITG, so thank you for having me, Beremy. It's been great.
Absolutely. And I'll talk to you later.
All right, man. See ya.